Good evening, students. Tonight we're going to talk about Chapter 10, Witness Observation and Perception. Obviously, how we perceive things and identify things, and when we talk to people, it's very important. So if we're dealing with locating and identifying witnesses, we're learning that eyewitness identification is usually very poor when it comes to testifying in court. So when we go to a scene of a crime, it's very important to ask, and this is where the officer's experience and in dealing with certain crimes, such as an assault, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Those are the things that we take into account when dealing with basically what's a witness, and what are some of the factors that deal in perception and how we perceive things. How we describe this shirt. What we're finding is, if I'm asking for a personal description of someone, and this is what I find out is, I usually ask the women. Women in clothing, phenomenal. Guys, not so good. So when we're asking clothing descriptions, females generally give a better perception of what they were wearing. How old are they? How tall are they? How much do they weigh? What do they say? Sometimes it's very difficult when you go to a scene of a robbery because you're looking down the barrel of a gun. Can you tell me what he looked like? No, all I saw was the gun. Because you have tunnel vision. When you have a high stress event, do you remember what happened? What's your perception of it? What do you think happened? I can tell you in some of it, very high stress situations, I wouldn't be able to describe too much of anything. So how we perceive that. We had an officer the other day, the guy ran from him. I don't know if I told the story, but he's telling everybody he had a green jacket. A green jacket. We ended up finding out it was a gray jacket. So, those officers' perception in a high stress situation sometimes isn't very good. What are some of the noises that affect us? Was there noise going on around? What type of sounds and odors? I recall a sexual assault one time where a guy broke into a house and was sexually assaulting a female. And the only thing she could tell me was not much of a description other than he was white, but one distinct characteristic is that he smelled very, very bad. And, generally, body odor isn't necessarily an issue. Most people shower and bathe and bath. Throughout my day in police work, I don't sweat, perspire, unless I'm wearing my bulletproof vest in the summer, then I may smell at the end of the day. But she states it was very distinct, the odor that this guy had. So we take that into context and think about, what's this guy do? Is he a construction worker? We did find out there was construction workers working next door. So, we look at some of those characteristics. What are their physical characteristics? Can we effectively describe a person that we see for relatively 10 to 15 seconds? So generally when we go to a scene of a crime, we will separate witnesses. Very important to put witnesses on either side of the building and interview them separately. Because what happens is, if you put people together, what normally happens is they start talking. Oh no, the guy was 5'8", not 5'12". Yeah, 5'12". 5'11". No, I think he was about 200 pounds. Oh no, he was at least 240. So you see the variation in the sizes, and you want that variation, and you want people to generally look at them separately. What are the emotional and psychological considerations you take into effect? Think about the person that just got robbed of their purse, or now they think their whole livelihood is gone. What about the victim of a sexual assault? We're asking victims of sexual assaults to describe their attackers, and sometimes that's very difficult. What is their experience in education? Some people aren't as educated as other people, and we might not get the description or the questions answered that we want answered. Think about prejudice and biases. How we perceive people. I was just a dirty guy. We all have prejudice and biases. And what we do with those is we have to weed out those characteristics and consider why are they giving this information. Think about a domestic violence situation or an assault. They literally hate this guy, and they're going to give a description of him, and it really didn't match the description of this person. So you have to take with what people say with a grain of salt. We talk about their memory. How good is their memory? I tell people, when you write a report, paint an accurate picture. Because remember, the criminal justice system works very slow. From the time of arrest to the time of trial, you're looking at a year, maybe even longer. So how do we in law enforcement remember what we said and what we did and what the witness said a year from now? We want to make sure that we get that information down and that we write that information down in an accurate police report. We handle in law enforcement, we handle hundreds of cases where we seem to have problems remembering what we did last night or what we did last weekend, so we write it down. Ask the witness to write it down in their own words. Give them a witness statement form, and there's a reason we do that. When we get them in before trial, is this a statement you provided to me? Is this an accurate description of what you gave to me? So, those things are a huge factor when it comes to later in prosecution. There's no question that you wrote that witness statement, and there's no question that you identified that person. So what we do is try to limit how much our memory decays over a period of time. Identifying people, what were they wearing? Name, age, height, complexion, what clothing were they wearing? Shoes, jewelry, things that we tell people to look for now that are what we consider individual characteristics. And when I say individual characteristics that are only individual to that certain person. For example, as little as it is, you can see this mole on my chin or above my chin, above my lip. So you look at that small mole. So we ask people to look at those characteristics when they're involved in a situation. And a big one that's coming back that's huge is tattoos. A lot of people have tattoos. Did you see any scars, marks, or tattoos? And those characteristics are only to that individual. I can assure you, you won't find another person too much that has a mole exactly on the left side of their face right above their lip that's balding, middle-aged white guy, overweight, blah, 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 gray, things like that. So those individual characteristics are very important when we talk about, I talk about it in criminal investigation. Those characteristics are important. We had a robbery once, and the guy had almost shot the guy. And the store owner came in at 5 a.m. He was being burglarized, and he's a store owner that carries a gun. And he had actually pulled a hammer back to shoot the gentleman with that was breaking into the store. And the only characteristic he could give me was, it was a white guy, but he had a huge panther, a black panther went down around his neck. And it didn't take us long when we put that out over email, said, hey, is there any state parolees, any convicts, that anybody that you remember had a large panther on the right side of his neck? And it literally took us hours to identify a possible suspect. So we take that suspect and we put him in a lineup with 8 different people. We take him up to the witness immediately before their mind starts decaying and they start to forget what this person looked like. Remember, they only identified a panther on their neck, so we really want to try to hurry up and get that information to them immediately. In law enforcement, we're allowed to do things called a field identification, and the Supreme Court has ruled, like if we have an active incident where we take a robbery suspect into custody, or I say robbery suspect, any suspect who was involved in an incident not far from the scene of the crime. So we get the call, we go to the scene, and we bring the person back. You can't do that. But the law has said, don't ask me why the law is this way, when you bring a person back to the scene, that is basically telling the witness that that's the guy who did it. However, if we catch the guy 2 blocks from there and we end up taking the guy to the suspect, and we have the suspect standing there next to a law enforcement officer being detained on the street, that is a legal detention, and that is a good field identification. Don't ask me what the difference is, whether we transport him back to the scene or whether we go show the field lineup at the police stop, that was legal. I'm not into all that. What we don't do and what you don't see anymore is, and you see it on TV and you still see it today, and I kind of giggle at it because we don't find 6 other people to come to the police station that are about the same height, about the same age, about the same gender, and we throw them in a lineup and we have the person come in and we show them an actual personal lineup. With technology today, that's not happening. When you think about where do we, you think about some of the rural areas, where do we find people that look like me? Sometimes it's very difficult. As terrible as I look, it's hard to find 5 individuals that look like me that we can throw personally in a lineup into the system. So what we use is what's called a photo array, and I alluded to it earlier. It's 8 photographs. So what we do is we can upload a photograph into the system, or we can look for a booking photo if the person has already been arrested. When you're arrested, you're fingerprinted and photographed, and you're put into a system called JNet system. And every police department in the country can look at this and go, okay, this is the guy. So if I was arrested, they put me into a system. They categorize my gender, height, weight, hair color, eye color, all the demographics that I have. What they do is we will then go in the computer, pull me up as a suspect, then you simply, with the click of a mouse, you can click on it, and it'll populate 7 other people that look generally like me, and it'll spit out a lineup of random people. And then you can go and show the person the lineup and see if they can identify the person that committed the crime. Now, we've even gone so far in court, if I'm working as a case as a detective and I want to show a photo array in a case that I am conducting, I cannot show the lineup because I may suggest something or say something that may seem suggestive. Pretty interesting. So now what I do is I take another police officer who knows nothing about the case, who has no idea who the suspect is, and I give it to him in a folder sealed, and I say, take that in there to my witness, show the witness, and see if she can pick out anybody in that photo array. And the interesting part is the officer doesn't even know who the suspect is. So basically, that in and of itself is fantastic, because I can't go in with a photo array and go, do you see that guy somewhere? And you're pointing to his picture. And you can't do that. So in order for us to make sure that that doesn't happen, we will have someone else do it. And it seems to be working out very well, because the officer can get up on the stand and go, hey, I had no idea who the suspect was when I went into that room. So the photographic lineups are very important. But if you think about it, in this whole thing of identifying witnesses and how we perceive, everybody has their own perception of people, how we describe people. Was he aggressive? Was he passive? Did he say something that you recall or you remember specifically that he said that could be individual to his character? Okay, for example, I don't want to use any profanities, but show me the freaking gun. Okay, that's important. Write that down specifically, exactly what he said. Okay, and if another person heard it, have them write it down, because it's a little different when you walk in and say, give me the money, or give me the freaking money, or give me the money or I'm going to blow your head off. So those are three distinct, although it's still robbery, so the severity of the robbery and the grading of felony 1, 2, or 3 could come into effect just depending on what the person said. So we need to think about all those considerations when we talk about observation and perception. We all perceive things differently, and you have to be able to weed through that information, ask the specific questions that you need to ask, and make sure you ask the questions that you need to ask. Basically, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And remember, a lot of people that you're talking to just don't volunteer information. You have to elicit information from there. Remember, communication. Asking the words from the person that you want answers from. Okay? Once you get all those down, it works out very well. So remember, witness observation perception is very important. How people describe certain things. As I said, if I have a female there, I'm talking to that female all the time, because they perceive clothing, they perceive men, they perceive women. They're a lot more astute and observant than men. Sorry. Call it a stereotypical thought in my mind, but I can tell you that it's definitely a different playing field when women describe things, because they're very specific in doing that. So that's witness and perception. It's kind of a short chapter. I just wanted to cover that for a few minutes, and we'll pick up chapter 11 next. Have a great night.